Okay. Hi, I'm back. Um, my cat really wants to be held. This is Juniper. You want to purr for the camera, for the mic. So we'll see how long she'll sit here while I do this, but she really wants cuddles. So I'm back with a second year single. I finally finished it. It took me a while to finish it, which isn't normal for me with books. I think because I started doing this video diary slash review so I can remember books when new things come out and how I felt. It's harder for me to just kind of sit down and read a whole book because I feel like I have to take notes so that I can record this later. So yeah, I finally finished this, but for this one, I'm just going to be talking about chapter 16 through 20, and then the next video I'll talk about 21 through 24 plus the epilogue. So yeah, so we're back with Sora, and it's time for her little live interview. So she's getting set up to do um, Let's Talk, I think is what it was called, and she has like wardrobe and shoes from her manager. It's all stuff she would never own, and she feels very glamorous, like the prettiest she's ever been. But in the back of her mind, she's still thinking about how Jack dropped the L. Okay, she wants to go. You want to go? Okay. So she's talking about how, or she's thinking about how Jack dropped the L bomb, and she's just like, we barely know each other, even though we've known each other our whole lives. Like she kind of gets wrapped around the axle about that because they've only reconnected. It's been like a month, maybe two, and she hasn't seen him since elementary school. So she's just like, how can he know if he loves me? But in the back of her mind, she's like, I need to focus on this show. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. They're really excited about my solo February thing that I just came up and pulled out of my ass. But she doesn't, like, throughout this whole time, she's never really been fully invested in this. Like, she just wants a job. It's like she's always wanted to do non for profit stuff and like things that actually matter. And she doesn't think writing essentially what would be a love article would be that important. But yeah, so back to her setting up for this. So she meets her makeup artist, and like it's this young girl. She's gorgeous, and she's like, "Hey, I'm doing solo February. I'm so excited to meet you." And Sora's just like, oh, "This gorgeous girl is doing solo February," and she talks about all the boy issues she had in the past. And Sora's like, "Oh yeah, more power to you, girl, because the men you pick are awful, but also it just seems like the men are awful in general." And while she's talking to this girl, she kind of feels like a hypocrite because she's been doing like this little side thing with Jack this entire time. Um, and she's just like, I've kind of been doing solo February, but I gotta keep telling people I'm doing solo February, even though I'm kind of dating Jack, but I'm just also not really dating Jack, and I've told him that. So she's pulling people all different types of ways, and she's lying about it. So, okay, you want to go now? So it's finally time for her to go into the show, and she notices that they want her to sit in like this really high bar stool. So she's just, how the hell am I gonna get up there? I'm in this tight dress and these heels. So she walks up there, she like power walks, and she gets on the chair, no problem. And you meet the host. I didn't write down their names because I didn't think they were important. But it's like this woman who's excited because like she kind of believes in the stuff Sora says, and she kind of hates her male co-host. And then there's the male co-host who's kind of like, kind of like those frat boys, the ones who aren't necessarily looking for love but think they can get anyone because they're gorgeous. And the two hosts kind of have like this sexual tension that Sora senses, and she's just like, these people love each other, but more hate than anything else, but they're attracted to each other. So they have this weird vibe. And the girl's excited for Sora to be there, and she's like, "Oh, tell us more about your stuff." And Sora's talking about what Solo February stands for, how it's putting yourself first and not necessarily being desperate for a guy, and all these other things. And then the male co-host is like, "Isn't it the opposite of what you're saying? Isn't it very man hating? And aren't you actually desperate for a guy? You're just playing hard to get." And then Sora does kind of like, the Barbie monologue that's pretty famous. I can't remember the actress's name, America Ferrera. I think that's her name, where she talks about how women can't be pretty enough, they can't be skinny enough, they can't be smart enough, they can't be dumb enough, they can't be thick enough. There's really no winning because different people want different things from you, and the bar is always moving. So Sora kind of has that moment, and the female host is like, yes. And the crowd is like super excited. And like in the middle of Sora's little Barbie woman empowerment spiel, she sees Jack, and he is not in the studio, but outside the studio because they had like this glass wall for passerbys to sit and watch the show, but they can't hear the audio. So Sora gets a little distracted by that, and the snippet of her being on the show is actually pretty short. After that, she kind of walks out and she meets a lot of the people who were excited to see her, a lot of her fans, as one might call them, or like people who were following along with her solo February story. And once she gets out on the street, Jack is there. He's like, "Hey, you didn't even tell me you were going to be on TV. I would have loved to watch it. I would have made time." And she's like, kind of blows him off a little bit, not as excited to see him. Like the banter and the camaraderie that they usually have together isn't there because obviously she knows she's surrounded by people who think she's being single and she can't flirt with this guy, can't do all the things that she was doing, and he senses the vibe and it gets really awkward. But then her manager shows up, so it gets even more awkward because the manager looks between them and she's just like, I know what this is and I don't like it. And she's like, hey, Sora, we gotta go. We have an appointment for something. And Sora's like, okay, sorry, bye. Like, definitely just blows him off. And that is the end of chapter 16. Chapter 17 is the day after the show, and Sora realizes that she's been blowing off her dress fitting for her sister Nami's wedding that's coming up. So she goes over, tries on the dress, and really struggles to zip it up. Like you can tell she's stubborn because she spends a good section of a couple of chapters forcing that zipper up. And Nami gets impatient. She's like, "What's taking so long? Come on, come on!" And Sora's really struggling. She pulls the zipper. I think she gets it like 3/4 of the way up, and then she puts on like a shawl, hoping that'll hide that she can't fit into this dress that she used to fit into a little bit ago. And like, um, they've already done the sizing for it for her previous size, so now she's gained more weight, and she assumes it's from her unhealthy obsession with bacon, which honestly probably. But she doesn't eat well in general, so it could be a number of things she's consuming. So it becomes almost like this little cartoonish thing where she's just like trying to hide. And she goes out, and her sister's like, "Why are you wearing that shawl?" And like the little old lady who is there, the seamstress, to make sure everything fits right, is also like, "Take off the shawl. Like, what are you doing?" And she takes off the shawl, and they're just like, oh, "What are you doing?" Let's see, what else did I write on this whiteboard? But what happens? And then it turns into like an argument because Nami, her little sister, wants everything to be perfect for her wedding. She's like a bridezilla and she has anger issues. And Sora is like kind of spiraling, kind of self sabotaging her life in general, but she also has anger issues. And they get those anger issues from their dad because he was someone who didn't handle any type of minute environmental changes very well. So now they don't necessarily handle anything well either. And it's just somewhat of like a little messy family dynamic. And they argue, and Nami gets really hurtful, and she's just like, "You eat all this bacon, you're gonna have a heart attack like that." And she's just like, "That was really rude." Like that's how Sora feels. But then Nami kind of like stomps away, but she's still in the room, like just kind of like pouting with her back turned, almost kind of, I guess, like this. And then she's like, "Did you know? Have you been keeping up with your ex-husband?" And Sora's like, "Why would I keep up with my ex-husband? That's weird. That's not healthy behavior." Not that Sora really has generally healthy behavior, but at least she has that boundary. And if you recall, we saw her husband and his new girlfriend in the grocery store recently, Lululemon Girl. Um, And Sora's just kind of like, why would I keep up with him? And why do you still keep up with him? And Nami's like, oh, well, I never stopped following him on Instagram. And Sora's really hurt by that because she's just like, you're my sister and he did me very dirty and you're still following him. You're still keeping up with his life. Like, that's weird. Where do your loyalties lie? And Nami just kind of brushes it off. Like, you should see. So she gives her phone and she's scrolling through. And Sora comes to the photo that Nami wants her to see. And it's her ex-husband and Lululemon Girl announcing that they're happily pregnant. And then Sora also is just like, the hell. And she's like kind of zooms in on the picture and she sees that the girl's also wearing like an engagement ring. And it's one that Sora is very familiar with because it's the same engagement ring she wore because it is her ex-husband's like great grandma's ring that he passes down to like every wife or whatever. And it really triggers Sora, not because she necessarily wants to be with her ex-husband, but because it brings up really hard memories for her, because they're posting this Instagram picture perfect thing of her being pregnant. They're excited. And Sora is recalling when she found out she was pregnant, and that's why they ended up getting married. He accused her of lying about being on the pill. And then he cheated on her entire pregnancy, the entire time. And she was really sick for a good portion of it. And she miscarried, and he literally didn't care. So, like, it's very triggering for her to see what seems like the picture perfect, we're pregnant, and she really hates it, which honestly I get. That's a lot. She probably needs therapy. And that ends chapter 17. I combined chapter 18 and 19 because I didn't think chapter 18 necessarily had a whole lot going on. It's just Sora's mom comes over and she's like, I heard you and Nami had a fight. What happened? And Sora's like, you always take her side. Da, da, da. And her mom's like, no, I'm just really here to see what happened. And she's like, I told her that her husband sucked, that he was a mediocre human being, and the only reason she thinks he's perfect is because he never disagrees with her. He's always just like, yeah, okay, whatever. He literally just exists. She told him how she thought he was lazy because he talks about how he's always going to do stuff and he never does it and all these things. And Sora's mom is like, oh, thank God. And Sora's like, what do you mean, thank God? I thought you liked him. And the mom is just like, no, I don't like him at all. I just kind of tolerate him because Nami seems happy. And they just kind of have like a little heart to heart. And the mom's like, why didn't you ever talk about this? And she's like, because you always made it feel like if I spoke up or did anything weird that I would be hammered down. Like the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. So she's like, I just got quiet. I just didn't voice my opinion. And she's like, and you and Nami were always getting along really well. That I always felt like I was like the odd one out. And that just kind of like they have like the little bonding moment, mother and daughter, and they realize that maybe they should do better communication. Because the mom's like, I don't have a favorite, just different things with different daughters, blah blah blah. So that ends, I think, chapter 18. Um, chapter 19, I think after talking to her mom, Sora decides that she's going to give Jack a chance just because the mom and her agree about that one thing. It's just kind of like going off a high. Like, oh, I just had a good conversation with my mom and I'm feeling good and I think Jack might be the one. So she like sends Jack a message like, I'm coming to your award show, blah, blah, blah. And he never gets back to her. And she's just like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to get cute and I'm going to go. So she takes the taxi. She wears a cute outfit. She goes to the award show. And it's like at the top of this very fancy like skyscraper. And when she gets there, she sees Jack. It takes her a minute to find him, but she sees him. And she's walking over to the empty seat next to him. And as soon as she walks over, Mal shows up. Malort is her name, but Mal is what they call her. Okay, Juniper. You okay? My cat is very lovey today. Um, but Sora's walking over to Jack's empty chair, and then Mal pops up and she saunters over and like sits down in the chair, and um Sora's just kind of like, I can't believe I made the same mistake. He's just a piece of crap, just like every other guy. And she just kind of runs off. And Jack chases after her, and she's like, no, I don't want to talk. I don't want to do anything. This is all stupid. And she's just like, I just made the dumbest mistake of my life. Because before she ran off to see Jack, um, she posted the last one of her solo February articles. And she's just like, I know I said I was gonna do solo February, but I think I really met the love of my life and I'm gonna quit. Sometimes you have to chase love, blah 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 blah. And she's chasing love and it looks like he's been playing her all along. She's mad. So she runs off back into the cold, freezing. Um Jack tries to get her to stay, get her to talk to him. And in the middle of that, Mal is on stage saying that Jack won the award that he's there for and that him and her are going into business together. And Sora's really pissed. Okay. Okay. She's back. Sora's really pissed, so she runs off, and Jack follows her, and then she leaves in a taxi after kind of listening to him talk, but not really listening to him talk. And he gave her his suit jacket because she's in the cold, freezing. And that is the end of chapter 20, chapter 19. Chapter 20 is Sora kind of moping around, laying around. She's sad. Jack has texted her a bunch and said, hey, whenever you feel like talking, let me know. Even if you never feel like talking, just letting you know I'll always be here waiting for you. So she's ignoring all his text messages. She's crying. She's getting hate messages online from her viewers who are just like, you couldn't even last a whole month. She's like, you're such a fraud. Your solo February thing's full of crap. You're full of crap. You don't deserve love. I hope you die. You know, the typical hate messages you get if you post anything online. But these people actually hate her because she was a hypocrite versus the hate you see on like Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, social media comments, and they just hate you for existing. So, very similar. Pam, her downstairs neighbor who hates her and is the head of the condo board, brings up the new dog food that Zora bought. It's Farmer's Dog. And I think that's interesting that they use an actual, like, real brand. I think it's the first real brand in the whole book, and the book's almost over. And Pam's just like, hey, I brought up your dog food. It was downstairs. I thought you should have it because it needs to be refrigerated or whatever. And it's kind of like an olive branch because Pam has literally never cared about Sora. Quite literally has never cared about Sora. And they just kind of have like a moment where Pam's just being a nice human being and doesn't despise her. And I think that just ends there. Like they just kind of have a little powwow without the underlying notes of hate that usually come with Pam. And Sora's just like, okay, well, Larry, might as well try your brand new expensive dog food. It's got peas and vegetables and meat in it. And she sets it up for Larry, and Larry sniffs it and doesn't take a bite. And that is the end of chapter 20. Okay, Juniper. Juniper, relax. Sit down. Be a lap kitty. You don't have to be in my face. Sorry. Um yeah, so that ends chapters 15 through 20. Just kind of like watching the I guess the climax of the story happen, all the exciting things happening and all the bad things happening. Um like it's definitely not an awful book, it's just not groundbreaking, I guess, when it comes to stories. I finally figured out what I think it actually reminds me of, and I think it reminds me of like those cute little fan fictions that I want to say everybody used to read, but it was probably just me and a couple of other weirdos, like those things you read on like fanfiction.net and like Wattpad and Archive of Our Own. Those stories that were written by like young aspiring writers that are just kind of cutesy and not super complex. Um, but yeah, I'm still enjoying it. It's still so far so good. So I think last time I gave it like a 3 point something out of 5. I think I'm still going to leave it there, maybe like 3.8, 3.9, push it up a little. Because it's not a bad story. It's just not anything that's like, gotta read it. Like, I'm desperate to read it. So much interesting stuff is happening. It's just relatable. Like, it's a relatable love story. And it's like a cliche. And I think what I'm starting to realize is it's almost like Abbott Elementary. I love that show. But I remember a lot of people saying like there was nothing groundbreaking about it. Like it's just a sitcom and it follows sitcom tropes. And I agree, but I think it is groundbreaking, and I think there's something very comforting about following a formula. So I think the story follows the formula of like a fun little rom com, maybe even like a Hallmark rom com, but a little spicier. So that add in the fan fiction. So yeah, it's growing on me. I like it, um, and I'll be back. Who knows when? I just post these whenever I feel like it. With the last part of the story. Juniper may not be here, but she is now. So say bye, Juniper. Say bye. She's just purring. Okay, bye.